Now, in both of these books, specifically Beyond the Source, well, both of them actually, the information that I'm going to give you in this lecture is just about scratches the surface. And then if you think about the information in the books doesn't even scratch the surface of what's out there, then you can understand that it was a very hard task to channel this information. And one thing I have noticed as I've moved on through working with the source entity and the origin, the absolute, that entity which created the source entities, is that the more, and I think Dolores has also experienced this as well, the more you work with them, the more you get used to the information, the more information they give you later. So you're able to work with more detailed information and understand more complicated concepts. And that's certainly been the case in part 2, but we'll go through some of that anyway. So in this instance, I want to go through the history of God, just a little bit over my awakening process and how I've come to be in the position I have in terms of working with the variously high-level frequency entities. I'm going to just to discuss three or four of those very, very briefly. The first one I contacted was Byron Hum, who was a guide given to me by the Om to help my hand energetically as I moved up the higher frequencies. And then I want to go through a short history of the origin and the source entity, just to give you an idea of what's out there, and some understanding of spiritual physics and the source entity's multiverse, together with an illustration of how dimensions are overlaid. Then I want to go through an ascension through the frequencies just to give you an idea of how mankind and other entities ascend to the frequencies and how you can use the undulations that occur within different frequency bands as a leg up into the next frequency, and how when we come down the frequencies to incarnate in the physical body that we call mankind, we do lose an awful lot of our communication. And very, very quickly at the end, I want to just go over again why we're here and the importance of the Earth. And then I want to move into Book 2. And go over in some limited detail what the source entities are and the functional maintenance of a source entity, because there's 11 aspects that the source entity has to work with to make sure it adjusts its own functionality. And then I'm going to go through a microcosm of the information that I received from source entities 1 through 6, illustrating one of their environments and one of their entities. And then I want to do a little peek show at the end just to give you some information, a bit of a taster of what's in Book 2. So this is some of the highlights from the history of God and my awakening. Now, throughout my young life, I'm now 51, I've been very interested in metaphysics, and certainly in my late teens, early to late teens, I was investigating the greater reality an awful lot. I was reading a lot of metaphysical books of the day and meditating extensively. And in one of my meditations, one of my morning meditations, I was confronted by 4 individuals in white robes who smiled to me benignly, lovingly, all-encompassingly, and told me that what I was doing was right, but it's not the right time to do it right now. You need to get some more earthly experience. And then from that point onwards, it's just gone there. So, okay. So I got confused then. Got 2 screens up here. You can only see one up there. From that point onwards, I really put my metaphysical stuff on the back burner and concentrated on what we do normally in the physical. I met my beautiful wife, Anne. We got married. We bought a house in the country. I worked hard. We bought other things, got lots of cats. I went through an education process that was outside of work. So I did correspondence courses within universities and got 2 master's degrees, and became a chartered engineer, and subsequently rose to the management ranks at work. College friends on one of the management courses said she was going to go to a Reiki session, and was I interested? So I thought, yeah, I can handle this, I'll have a look. 12 months later, I popped out the other side as a Reiki master. Almost synchronicitous to this, was within a few months of this, I was going to see an energy healer who was a first-generation student of Barbara Brennan. For those of you who know Barbara Brennan, she did Hands of Light and Light Emerging, and another book as well since then. And she said that she was starting to do a workshop to teach that which she was taught by Barbara Brennan, and some of the work that was done by John and Eva Piriakos and Susan and Donovan Tasenga. And would I be interested? So I went to a weekend, something similar to this, and I did some of the work there, and I was hooked. And signed up for a 4-year commitment that involved lots of therapy on myself. I had to go and receive psychotherapy to make sure I was clean to work with the energies, because we don't want to pass on any rubbish. So I went and did that. 4 years later, I became qualified. Part of that included channeling, past life healing, and understanding a lot of the detail around the human body and the aura. But whilst I was doing this, another friend of mine who's a Reiki person went to go and work in Sweden. And he was told by his Reiki master that if we went over there on a holiday, we went over on a cheap holiday, so we stayed with him in his house, that I would be attuned to receive different things. And on that Swedish holiday, you can see this picture here. This is where we went to on a walk. And there was a rock in the centre of this area here. You can see the mouse working. Okay, good. Which was where I received my attunement. And my friend and my wife, Anne, stayed on this suspension bridge here. And they both felt that there was an alien presence there, an energetic presence. And they were rewiring me to be able to work with different energies and work with different frequencies and entities. That attunement almost blew me away. I couldn't speak 3 words all day. I couldn't speak 5 words for the rest of the week, basically. And thinking about it now locks me up. So it was very, very difficult for me to accept what was going on. But what happened after that was quite remarkable, because as I was working with the Brennan-based healing science lectures and work that my energy teacher was teaching me, Helen Stott, I started to do things that I shouldn't be able to do. Now, we had to learn to traverse the lower frequencies to effect healing and repair work on the various parts of the auric layers and the chakras. So we had to move up and down the frequencies. And we were told there were 7 frequency levels, each one associated with a chakra and subsequently associated with a level of the human aura. But I found out I could go higher than that. Well, twice as high actually at that point in time. And I got reprimanded quite severely by my teacher for that. I wasn't grounded, I was going too high, it was causing a problem. But what I discovered was that there wasn't actually 7 levels associated with the human form, there was 10. The first 3 were the same, they were associated with the physical side, but rather than having 1 level associated with the spiritual physical, what we know as the astral, there was 4. And there was 3 above that were associated with the purely energetic. I also noticed that our physical environment, our physical universe, is held within 12 frequency bands. And when I moved above that, I noticed I went into different universes. And I went into the 13th and 14th. And those 13th and 14th levels were associated with those first frequency bands of the next full dimension. And I can explain that in some detail later. But moreover, when I moved up past the 14th level, I started to get in contact with other spiritual entities. So the first entity I was in contact with was Byron, who initially tried to frighten me off, and that was on the 27th level. And I also met a group of aliens who were on a base around some of the hills in Crete, Greece, who told me that they were there to experience the difference, the dichotomy, the duality between the older Greeks and the younger Greeks. The older Greeks working with the land and working with animals and working with the trees and the crops, whereas the younger Greeks were more interested in the materialistic side of life. So they were interested in that dichotomy there. But I also met other entities called the Om, who were created by that residual energy that was used by the Origin during one of its first experiments in becoming self-aware and experiencing, learning and evolving. And Hum, that entity within the Om, held my hand as I went higher and higher up the frequencies. And eventually, when I got past level 100, I encountered a larger entity who very slowly told me that it was our source entity, that is our God. And I went higher. And I eventually went out of that multiverse that is God, and when he got in contact with that entity that created our God, that entity that is in the Hindu text called the Absolute, but which announced itself to me as the Origin. So a little bit of history about the Origin. The Origin is the Absolute, it is everything. It's got structure, it's got a number of zones, 12 of them, 12 full dimensions, 12 full frequencies. I've since recognised it's got other things like planes, event space, and all sorts of other universal, multiversal, omniversal materials that are used to construct it.